All right, next step. So I replaced the old render with a new render for a very specific reason. The old render did not have, or rather had, a reflection on the ground plane. And that's all well and good if I put a reflection on the ground plane. However, um, the challenge is how do you rectify the elements that are on the ground plane as a reflection that you photoshopped in? Okay, so you can sort of edit things a few different ways, but generally speaking, you're going to work with materials at the ground plane that really aren't as reflective as I'm showing them here. And showing a reflection in the ground plane is kind of critical for activating that ground plane in most renderings, or at least most of these like sort of hyper-conceptual ones. So what I want to show you, I guess, is how you can begin to sort of map your building artistically onto the ground plane in a rendering where you don't have a reflective material. And then how do you actually get the foliage and stuff to work with it, right? So I guess, let's start with, well, let me reopen that. That was space. Let's go back to that. Okay, so it's a little bit darker, unfortunately, guys, but we can, well, let's brighten it up. I'll just go to image. Oh. Image adjustments, brightness and contrast. There we go, it's a little better. So the hardest part about this is picking the elements that you're going to, picking the correct elements to reflect onto the ground plane. There are a number of different ways you can do it. The simplest way is the lazy way, and that's to sort of cheat it a little bit. The challenge, I think, and let me just take a moment to kind of monologue about the challenge, right? So think about perspective. Okay, the challenge with perspective is our camera is above the ground plane, which means the base of our building is actually in a downward V, right? Or rather, an accurate V, right? Like it's facing up. Right? It's going up that way, and it's going up that way. So the top of our building is doing the same thing, but the opposite direction. If we were to reflect this building down onto the ground plane, what we really need is both the bottom of our building to be in that position and the bottom of our building below to be in the same position. And I'll show you what I mean. Let me just take the whole image, and I'm going to do what's called a copy merge. So you go to edit, and you go to copy merged. What this is going to do is it's not just going to copy whatever is on that layer, it's going to copy the entire composition of all layers that you've selected. So copy merged, and I'm going to paste, but I'm going to paste that on top just so we can look at it as an object sitting on top. Let me put that up there. What did I do? There we go. Get on top. It won't let me put it outside. There we go. So anyway, let's do this. Let's kind of bring down the opacity a little bit so I can see what I'm doing to this and how I'm trying to emulate the reflection. I'll free transform, and I'm going to flip this thing around so that it's upside down, and then I'm going to put it below my building. And I'm going to try to connect that corner. Okay, so right off the bat, you realize two things are wrong. It is facing the wrong direction, and the two bottom edges of the building are going the wrong way. So let me at least flip this horizontally. Okay, so now it's kind of going the right direction, but it's still facing the wrong way, right? Like this, see how the base of the building is going up here and it's going down there, right? That's a huge challenge. We can fix that in a few different ways. You can sort of bisect the image and try to cut it and then sort of pull it up, but it's going to get really warped and it might not really read very well. The lazy way is to just warp it, right? So you can right click, you can go to warp, and you can start to pull these things to a point where they sort of kind of match. Okay, and then what's going to happen is you need to edit it so that it sort of blends all of that out, right? And it's not going to meet with your building exactly, but it's going to allow for you to, well, I'll show you. Anyway, let's do, You could actually, for this one, I suggest don't worry about a layer mask so much unless you're really planning on doing a bunch of different things. But you just kind of want to erase it to the base, especially where you have opaque materials that aren't going to reflect as much right around the base. Okay, so that's sort of one option you can do is basically just that. And you could do any of your layer filtering settings that are going to give it either, you know, like more saturation, less saturation. You can lighten it, darken it, multiply, whatever. You can figure out a bunch of different ways to mess with that. But that is the lazy way. It kind of gets the point across, but it's not exactly physically accurate. It's close, though. You probably would want to warp if you really want to get into it. I'm assuming, let's free transform that and warp it again. You probably want to warp this stuff. Oh, sorry, not that. I didn't zoom out far enough. Let me select everything below that. Oh, it won't let me. Let me just do this. I'm going to copy that layer, paste it right in place. I'm going to get rid of this layer. The reason I did that is because now this is a singular object. Oh, I'm not on the right thing. There we go. What did I do? Oh, I see. I moved the wrong layer. Alright, so get rid of that. The reason I did that is because now this is a singular object and I don't have all that other crap that I need to deal with. So anyway, what I was trying to get at is the other thing you can do if you free transform that and warp it is you can sort of pull this edge out to make sure the things that are reflecting are a little bit more vertical. Okay, so that's important because, you know, the sort of the exact mirror is a little bit jarring. And then the other thing that I would suggest is I didn't do this perfectly on the sides, but whoops. There we go. The other thing I would suggest is we need to pull the opacity down quite a bit, a little bit more like that. And then you usually want to blur it or put some sort of like a distortion on it so that it's not going to look like it's a straight reflection. You know, because this doesn't look that different than what we did before previously. So you would go to let's do filter. We can go to blur. You could do a Gaussian blur. Scroll this thing up so that you can see exactly how much these things are being blurred, and then increase it to a point that it kind of works for you. 2. And again, you can sort of check off preview and check it on based off of what you're looking for. So that's with preview on, that's with preview off. That's probably a bit too much because I can't really see what's what. Something like a 2.9 would be fine. Okay, so that's one method. It's not exact or anything like that, but it's kind of the lazy method, and it gets you to a point that's a pretty decent result. You have any questions? So you could actually put like a concrete, and no, you cannot use a concrete material in this class, but for your future reference, you could use concrete materials and asphalt materials and still get this sort of nice, clean, reflective sort of look out of that. I guess there's one more thing I did want to show you. Rather than blurring it, you can go to filter. Actually, let's go to filter. Oh, no, you can't go to gallery on this one, can you? Let's go to, oh, it won't let you distort this? Why not? Huh. That's weird. Let's try selecting the whole page. Maybe then it'll let us do it. Huh. Alright, well, I don't know why it won't let us do it, but okay. Well, anyway, so that's one method. I'm going to stop this video and show you another method here in a moment.